Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the MCU Perspectives. And today we're going to be taking a look at the 19th movie to be released as part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Avengers Infinity War. And I've been really looking forward to seeing this movie. I mean it, oh my holy god. This is a film, ever since the inception of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, this film was built up big time. Like the first phase of the MCU pretty much just was pretty much just what pretty much just set up the groundwork for everything. It set up the characters that we would get to know. Like we got our basic team members. We got Iron Man, Black Widow, Hulk, Thor, Captain America, Hawkeye. Just the early films' job was to set up later films. But with Avengers end credits teaser showing that Thanos was the one that was bankrolling Loki's attack on Earth, you knew that at some point a confrontation was ultimately going to happen. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. I just kind of moved the camera a little closer. Anyway, as I was saying, with that revelation, you knew that Thanos was that the Avengers were going to have to face Thanos. And if you know anything about Thanos, you know he's a really big bad in the Marvel universe. Like he's the guy let's put it this way. In Marvel Comics number 1000, there was a short story there where Galactus where the only person that I think that's been able to actually take down Thanos in a fair fight was Galactus, who is considerably one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe, especially since he eats planets. So, yeah, Thanos is a very big deal. He has conquered planets. His own people were extremely powerful in the comics, and apparently he might have been a Captain Marvel villain. Don't quote me on that. Again, I haven't read early Captain Marvel. I'll get into that when I actually look at when I get to the movie. But Thanos was a big freaking deal. And it especially became more apparent when we got to Thor the Dark World. While again, I still don't care for Thor the Dark World. It's a dull movie and it just blah. It did still have some elements that lay the ground for later films, including the introduction of the Infinity Stones. When it revealed that not only was the ether of that the whole plot was wrapped around in that film was actually one of the Infinity Stones, but the Tesseract, this powerful artifact that was kind of the centerpiece of the first phase of the MCU, was also an Infinity Stone. And so as the films continued on, it continued laying the groundwork more and more, and you knew eventually they were going to be doing their own version of the Infinity Gauntlet storyline. And so, just little by little, we saw the Infinity Stones keep getting added. We saw the reveal of the Power Stone in Guardians of the Galaxy, where Thanos employed Ronan the Accuser to grab it. In Avengers: Age of Ultron, it was revealed that the gem in Loki's staff was actually the Mind Stone, which was ultimately given to Vision. In Doctor Strange, it was revealed the Eye of Agamotto's power source was the Time Stone. But just little by little, you saw the Infinity Stones getting revealed. And as the movies continued on, they just kept continuing just to little by little ease you into this big crossover, and just dropping little hints, seeing Thanos here and there, and seeing him biding his time to the point where it kind of became a joke about whether Thanos actually was a viable threat, or if he just sat on his ass while everyone else did everything. That was kind of just as the films continued on, you saw things just continue to escalate higher, and saw things continue to go on as you saw bits and pieces of the groundwork being laid, until eventually in Avengers: Age of Ultron, you saw Thanos just finally get off his ass and say, you know what, I'm just gonna do this myself. And while it did take a few movies to get there, that was a few movies. We finally started getting that. When the trailer for this film hit, it looked so freaking good, and it did look like it was going to be finally going to be a payoff for them for all of this. And it looked really good seeing Thanos actually getting into action, knowing that he was now finally going to try and achieve his goal of collecting all of the Infinity Stones. And if you were a fan of the comics, you knew that was a big freaking deal because the Infinity Stones are each supposed to control an aspect of the cosmos. So having them all, and so even in the comics, wielding all six pretty much gave whoever had them the power of a god. And so you knew as someone like Thanos, it was going to be a very big problem. And again, and so when this film was finally going to be aired, it had a lot of hype to live up to. Because again, this film was took a decade just to happen. It took a decade to build all this up and finally get a payoff. So in a way, it was like the ultimate risk, like with Avengers. Like just establishing the MCU was a risk in and of itself. Having interconnected universe movies that were all part of one continuing universe, and then to finally have it all pay off with a crossover. And so with Infinity War, it was an even bigger task. Not only interconnecting more films that were brought into the mix, more characters that were introduced in other films who had their own solo movies, but also trying to pay off a storyline that had been built up little by little over with the movies, with a villain that we only met whose gravitas was only spoken of, and who on the most we saw of him was just him sitting in a chair sounding intimidating or looking intimidating, or at the very least just taking a glove. That was all. With Thanos, so the film kind of had a lot of still had a lot to go through when it eventually was made. But people were excited. It looked epic. It sounded epic. And so I, of course, had to see the movie. I wound up seeing it the day it was released. I wound up seeing it the day it was released, and the theater was packed. I'm glad I got there early. I went to the bathroom before the film started. Because I was, which was a really good idea because when I went to the bathroom I learned I really had to go. But I was able to sit through and watch the whole movie, and holy crap, man! My only words walking out of the theater was pretty much that, except replace crap with shit. Just damn. This film, I think, even now with Endgame released, I still think really holds up. But how so? Well, let's get into my long-ass spoilerific plot summary. Once again, take a seat. Take a seat. And while this film may be a year old, I'm gonna put I'm like I said, spoilers abound. If you have not been exposed to the MCU, though to be fair, why have you been watching all my videos if you haven't? But again, like I said, if you haven't been exposed to the MCU and haven't seen this movie yet, I recommend just walking away from this video. I'm gonna be spoiling the story rotten. You've been warned. So anyway. In terms of when this movie takes place, the film actually picks up directly where Thor Ragnarok ended. If you remember at the end of that film, Thor was pretty much taking the Asgardians to Earth, and but on their way there, their ship was attacked by another ship, and this film actually opens up with that. As it turns out, that ship belonged to Thanos and his crew, as the first thing we see are a crap ton of Asgardians dead on what's left of Thor's ship, as Thanos and his underlings that are called the Dark Order walk in with one guy, this psychic guy who has this one guy with great psychic powers, just monologuing about how they all are should rejoice that they have the pleasure of being killed by Thanos. And in the background, you see. And as he's walking around, we see that one of the few survivors is Loki, who's just kind of sitting in the middle of this carnage. And in the hole that these people walk through, we finally see Thanos standing in an outline. In one hand is Thor, looking very bloody and beaten. And on the other hand, we see him wearing the titular Infinity Gauntlet. Only he's already got a gem. It turns, as we later learn in the film, it turns out that prior to this movie, the first place that Thanos went to was Xandar, and he wound up decimating the planet to get the Power Stone. So, yeah, pretty much the whole point, pretty much the one thing the Guardians of the Galaxy are trying to prevent in that movie came to pass. So, thank you for undoing that. That's sarcastic, by the way, but whatever. And so it turns out the reason why Thanos is attacking the Asgardian ship is because he's after the Space Stone, or AKA the Tesseract, which Loki denies, and he pretty much just tells Loki, if you don't give it to me, I'm going to kill your brother. your brother, and I'm gonna kill your brother. Loki tries calling the bluff and says, just go right ahead. Go right ahead. Trying to pretend that he doesn't care if Thor lives or dies. And so Thanos uses the Power Stone to pretty much start torturing Thor until Loki finally just says, "Okay, enough. Okay, enough." Thor does try to deny, saying that they don't have the Tesseract, that it was destroyed when Asgard went up in flames when Surtur attacked. Only for Loki to summon the Tesseract, as he wound up grabbing it before he left Asgard. However, as he's in the process of handing it over to Thanos, he says, "Oh, one more thing, we have a Hulk." And just before that happens, the Hulk just charges in and attacks Thanos, causing him to drop Thor. As such, it leads to a short bout between Thanos and the Hulk, and I do mean short, and it is kind of fun, and it does actually look really nice, and it is kind of fun to watch. And his underlings almost step in, but the leader, the psychic guy, says, "No, let him have his fun." And it's a one-sided fight. Specific in Thanos' favor, anyway. As he manages to turn the tide of battle very quickly, as he pretty much manages to take down the Hulk using precise attacks, and just eventually causing him to get disoriented, hitting him in a weak spot, not even lifting up and just slamming him on the ground and knocking him out cold. So Thanos beat the Hulk with very little effort. Keep in mind that the last guy who took down the Hulk was Tony Stark, and that with a suit designed specifically to defeat the Hulk, and it took him a lot more effort than that. So the fact that Thanos was able to beat the Hulk so quickly, this does not bode well for the heroes. As such, Thor is kind of held in place by the psychic guy who utilizes the parts of the ship to kind of wrap him up and even gag him. And so before they can actually do anything, and so as the Hulk is on the ground, we see that Heimdall is actually one of the remaining Asgardians that's still alive, as he grabs his sword and manages to use the sword's powers to summon the Bifrost and send the Hulk away, which Thanos tells him was a big mistake, as he grabs a spear and stabs Heimdall in the gut. Which is good news to the actor, because apparently he didn't like playing Heimdall, but whatever. Whatever. I still got mad respect for him. He didn't like the role, but he still kept doing it, so kudos to him. But whatever. Heimdall is now dead. And don't ask me how he summoned the Bifrost without the actual Bifrost. Don't know. Don't care. But Thor sees that and he's just pissed off, saying, "You're gonna die for that." That's when he gets gagged. And so the psychic guy, and don't ask me to remember any of their. Quick warning, I don't remember any of the guys in the Dark Order's names. I know there's the psychic guy who was called. I know is a psychic guy. We got a big brute, the woman, and a guy who uses spears. That's all I'm gonna say about them. I don't know their names. I don't know them in the comics, so I'm just gonna call them by those descriptors: psychic guy, woman, big guy, spear guy. Sorry. But anyway, like I was saying, the psychic guy then grabs the Tesseract and hands it to Thanos, saying pretty much just like, "Praise be to Thanos, no one in the galaxy has been able to wield at least 2 Infinity Stones." And so Thanos takes the Tesseract and just crushes it in his hands, leaving nothing but dust and the Space Stone, which he immediately places inside the Infinity Gauntlet. As such, he charges two members of the Dark Order to head to Earth, because 2 of the Infinity Stones are on Earth, and so he wants them to bring them to Titan. So he wants to bring them to Titan. In the meantime, he sends the Dark Order to Earth to gather the Infinity Stones. However, Loki, who's still around in all this, tries offering his services to Thanos, since he's had experience with Earth, which Thanos responds with, if you call failure experience. But Loki pretty much gives his whole spiel about how he is Loki, Prince of Jotunheim, son of Odin, god of mischief, and how he plans to deny his loyalty. At which point he then tries to stab Thanos, which Thanos actually stops with very little effort, not using the Space Stone. At which point he just grabs Loki around the throat and he kills him. Yeah, he manages to squeeze him so hard that his veins start popping, his eyes actually start going red, he starts going pale, and the last words that Loki gives out are, "You will never be a god," before he finally dies. It's a pretty gruesome scene. No gore is given, but damn, just seeing that scene just was like God. As such, Thanos uses the Space Stone to open up a portal for which he and the rest of the Dark Order disappear through. As he then before he did that, he used the Power Stone to pretty much just light up what's left of the Asgardian ship to pretty much just destroy whatever was left. As such, with them gone, Thor is able to break free from his bonds, but he's still very weak. He's very much pissed at Thanos before his ship blows up. In the meantime, we cut to Earth as we actually go to the Sanctum Sanctorum, as we see Doctor Strange get ready to head to the sandwich shop to get himself and Wong some sandwiches, before something crashes right through the roof, and it turns out that thing is the Hulk, as it turns out Heimdall sent the Hulk to Earth. However, as they go see the crater that the Hulk landed in, we see that the Hulk is now in the process of turning back into Bruce Banner, and when he's back, Bruce says Thanos is coming, which even Doctor Strange is like, who? As such, we then cut to Tony Stark and Pepper as we see them kind of jogging in the park. As we see that Tony is trying to, as we see that at this point, after the event, that now Tony and Pepper are dating, as Tony would propose to Pepper at the off screen during the events of Homecoming, and so he's trying to talk her into possibly having a kid, as he said he had a dream where they had a son that was named after like her uncle or cousin or something named Morgan. Pepper thinks it's not the right time, especially since he's built himself a new chess piece. While the last one was built for his heart, this one is a nanomachine container. Pretty much, it uses nanobots to construct armor and contains them all in this chess piece. So all he has to do is hit it, and he's covered in armor. So Tony tries reassuring her that it's just insurance for anything anything hiding in the closet. They have themselves a moment. It's kind of cute. Only for a portal to open up. Only for a gateway to open up. As Doctor Strange comes in and says, "Tony Stark, we need your help." Now, Tony is a little suspicious about who this guy is because he's never met Doctor Strange, only for Bruce to come walking out of the portal and just kind of embrace Tony in a hug. As such, Tony ends up going back to the Sanctum Sanctorum as he gets the whole lowdown on Thanos and the Infinity Stones, as we kind of get some proper history on them. And they did briefly talk about it in Thor: The Dark World, but in this case, the whole backstory of the Infinity Stones is that when the Big Bang occurred, these were 6 singularities that were all crystallized into 6 stones, each of them controlling some aspect of the universe. We got the ones we know about: space, time, etc. Space, which was the Tesseract; reality, the Aether; the Power Stone; the Mind Stone; the Time Stone; and the 6th stone that we actually have not seen until this movie, the Soul Stone. And they pretty much just laid out and say that if Thanos is able to get all 6 Infinity Stones, he would pretty much be unstoppable. As such, Tony is just kind of taking all this in just with a sense of, oh, sweet mother of God. He's not taking this well, as he looks at this and thinks this is that big disaster that he wanted to stop when he wanted to create Ultron. He thinks now this is it. This is now. And so his original plan is that he thinks they should just take the time, since Thanos needs all 6 Infinity Stones to be powerful, and they have the Time Stone right now, then they can just chuck it into the garbage disposal and be done with it. But Doctor Strange isn't willing to do that because they can with it they can. He thinks maybe they could stop Thanos, and their order is charged with protecting the Time Stone. Oh yeah, by the way, Doctor Strange is now wearing the Eye of Agamotto more commonly, so I guess he's learned how to wield it. Okay, good for him. But either way, yeah, he's not willing to give it up. But I do have to, and yeah, well, I do agree that it could be useful against Thanos. On the other hand, all you have to do is get rid of one of the stones, and Thanos' plan just goes down the crapper. So, yeah, I'm going with the man in the iron suit, in the metal suit. As such, but even with that in mind, they also know that since Vision has the Mind Stone, he'd be a potential target for Thanos as well. And however, unfortunately, Tony says that he doesn't know where he is, because as 2 weeks prior to this, he went off the grid as the tracker they had on him just was turned off, so they don't know where Vision could be. As such, doctor, they ask him, "Where can we? Do you know anybody that could find where Vision is?" And Tony says that Steve might know. And yeah, when Doctor Strange hears this, he realizes that he just kind of makes an crap noise, while Bruce just thinks, "Well, what are you talking about?" And what's kind of nice is that Bruce is in a way kind of it's just kind of the line. It's kind of like the guy for the newcomers, people who haven't seen any movies since like Age of Ultron. People who stuck to the Avengers movies, because in this point, because as we learned in Thor Ragnarok, he was on Sakaar as the Hulk for 2 years, so he does not know about any of the big stuff that has happened since Age of Ultron. He's unaware of the heroes that got introduced, like Ant-Man, Spider-Man, Black Panther, and all the others. He doesn't know he doesn't know what happened. He doesn't know that the Avengers split up and that Tony and Cap aren't exactly on speaking terms. So yeah, when he hears this, he says that he pretty much just tells Tony, "Do it anyway. We're kind of in the middle of a crisis. We need to do this now." As such, Tony reluctantly pulls out the burner phone that Cap sent him. Before he can send out a text, he knows that he thinks that something's off. And keep in mind, there's a hole in the Sanctum Sanctorum, so it's a window to the outside. And he sees that Doctor Strange's little cowlick is starting to blow in the wind. He asked the good doctor if he's doing that. He says no. Hold on a sec. Sorry about that. Anyway, they then step outside and find a spaceship hovering over New York in the shape of a ring. As such, from it come the psychic guy and the big guy, who are there, of course, for the Time Stone. They do their whole big spiel about how people of Earth rejoice, you are going to die by the hands of the children of Thanos. And Tony pretty much just tells him, get off. It's like, knock it off. Just tells him, it's like, knock it off, Squidward, Earth is closed today. Earth is closed today. As such, pretty much the heroes get into battle position as these guys are clearly here for a fight. However, when as Doctor Strange and Wong get into battle positions, Tony asks if Bruce is going to get ready. And while Bruce isn't exactly willing, he knows bigger threat, got no choice here. Only when he tries to Hulk out, it doesn't work. Like, we see his skin starting to turn green, but it doesn't. But there's no full transformation. Which even Tony is like, come on, dude, come on. But Bruce for some reason can't turn into the Hulk. Like, and the more he tries, the less it starts working, until eventually he just tells Wong to keep Tony safe, to keep Bruce safe. Sorry. While Tony goes into the action, activating his piece and getting into his new Iron Man armor, and yeah, it's still cool. As such, she gets into a fight with a psychic guy and the muscle guy, and pretty much it just leads to a very kick-ass fight as the psychic guy as Wong and Doctor Strange are just throwing more stuff at him, and the guy just keeps knocking it aside. Tony giving support with blasters and so forth. But eventually Tony kind of gets put aside by the muscle guy as they're knocked into the park. In the meantime, Bruce got ported away to that very same park, and as the action is getting to him, he's trying to just kind of knock himself. He's like, "Come on, Hulk! Come on, Hulk! Come on! We need you right now! Come on, Hulk! We need you to fight!" And the Hulk briefly comes out and yells "No" before fully reverting back into Bruce Banner. So my personal theory, and so yeah. It turns out that getting his ass so easily handed to by Thanos did not do well for the Hulk. And if you ask me, I think the Hulk is afraid of him, to the point where he doesn't want to come back out. So yeah, Bruce is kind of screwed in this situation. However, as Iron Man is continually fighting with the armored guy and almost gets punched in the face by him, he's suddenly saved by the arrival of Spider-Man, as when the spaceship showed up, Peter was apparently on a field trip when suddenly his spider sense went off and he was alerted to the presence of the ship. As such, he told Ned, he'd alerted Ned to it and got Ned to give a distraction to get all the kids' eyes off of him. And yeah, that's where we get a Stan Lee cameo. Stanley's the bus driver who just tells the kid, it's like, come on, kids, haven't you ever seen a spaceship before? At which point Peter puts on his web shooters, opens up a window and swings out the bus and gets into his Spidey jammies before swinging right into swinging right into the fray. As such, he and Iron Man are he and Iron Man start start fighting this guy. But in the meantime, Doctor Strange is still left fighting the psychic guy, who while they both put up a good fight. While Doctor Strange is putting up a good fight, eventually the psychic guy manages to pin him to a wall and puts him and kind of traps him. I was even making fun of his magical abilities. As such, he tries grabbing the Eye of Agamotto off of him, but when he touches it, it ends up burning him. As it turns out that Doctor Strange put a spell on it. It's a simple spell, but it pretty much ensures that the only person that can touch the Eye of Agamotto is and by extension the Time Stone is Doctor Strange himself, meaning that they can't, even if they wanted to, and even if they could take it, they can't. So their response, we'll just take you instead. As such, she wraps the good doctor up in these various pipes and chokes him and manages to choke him enough into falling unconscious. However, his levitating cape that we have established is alive manages to pull him out of the fray and flies him through the streets of New York. As they fly through, they fly right through the park where Iron Man and Spidey are fighting the muscle guy, and Iron Man tells him Iron Man tells him to go after him, since he's been because he did tell him that they're a wizard, that these guys were after the wizard, and that was the wizard that flew by. So Spidey ends up chasing after him, and eventually he does. And eventually, but unfortunately, the magic cloak ends up getting snagged on a light, which almost causes Doctor Strange to fall. Although Spidey manages to web him and almost pulls him to safety, until they get hit with a beam from the ship as it starts abducting Doctor Strange, with Spider-Man being pulled along for the ride. As such, he's pulled up to the ship, but Doctor Strange is pulled in, and as such, Tony is still fighting with the muscle guy, but he ends up getting help from Wong, who uses his slinger and open up a portal that sends the guy to the Antarctic. As the guy tries coming through, but they close it in on him, which in turn cuts off his arm. So, yeah, don't screw with that. In the meantime, Iron Man tries getting Spidey to just ends up has Friday open up send something from Avengers Manor straight to the ship, as he just keeps flying in the atmosphere. And while Doctor Strange is still on the inside with a psychic guy who managed to go up there as well, the Spidey is still clinging to the side of the ship, and unfortunately he's kind of running out of oxygen because they're leaving the atmosphere. As such, he eventually passes out and almost falls off the ship, but turns out the thing that Tony sent out was the Iron Spider suit from Homecoming. That he tried to give Peter at the end of Homecoming, which immediately flies onto Spidey and gives him the Iron Spider suit, and I admit it looks cool. It looks nice. I say, like, it does fit the traditional Spider-Man regalia, like the webs, red and blue, the eyes and everything, but I admit I prefer the one in the comics. I like that one. I'm a sucker for red and gold, or red and black. I just like red, okay? Okay, so while the MCU Iron Spider outfit is cool, I do kind of think the comic one is a little bit better. But hey, if you want to stick with traditional Spider-Man stuff, Spider-Man memorabilia, I'm sure maybe you like the Iron Spider outfit in this one. Either way, though, with the Iron Spider suit, he's now able to get a steady supply of oxygen. But Tony has Friday sends Peter home by ejecting a parachute in this suit that caused him to almost fall to Earth. As such, Tony manages to get into the ship, as he has to get inside to get to Doctor Strange, as he's being held captive here, and unfortunately he realizes this might be a bit of a one-way trip. As he goes in, he gets a call from Pepper, who's just kind of worried sick about him and wants him to come back down to Earth, but Tony is just kind of telling her, no, it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine. She just keeps begging him to come down, until eventually he loses the signal and his connection to Friday, since she's stationed on Earth. In the meantime, though, it turns out that Spidey is still on the ship, as he managed to shoot out a web to the ship and get to this open area and get before it closed up. So yeah, he's now on the ship too, as it flies off into space. Meanwhile, however, in space as well, we cut to the Guardians of the Galaxy, who turns out are warping to where the Asgardian ship was, as when the Asgardian ship got attacked, they sent out an SOS. they manage to pick it up, and their plan is to go in there and save the survivors, hopefully to get a reward. And if they don't get a reward, it's fine. They'll just take the ship as they'll just take their ship as payment if they can't do it. But they do manage to port right into the middle of where the Asgardian ship was and just find all the wreckage, seeing all the damage. And as they're flying along, Thor ends up crashing into their windshield. And at first they think, and the fact that he opens his eye at them makes him realize that he's alive. They end up bringing him in, and pretty much everyone's just admiring him as he's just so muscular and toned. And they think, they're just wondering, man, this guy. As they just keep in mind, like, it's just kind of funny as Peter Quill ends up just kind of looks at this and like, okay, guys, you can stop ignoring him. It's like, what's up with this dude? And Drax is like, no, you're a dude. This is a man. And they just keep complimenting him. And Peter Quill just keeps getting like, okay, this is a wake up call. I'm gonna get a Bowflex. And I'm gonna say this right now. For the rest of this vlog, I'm gonna call Peter Quill and Peter Parker by their superhero names because I don't want to have to keep calling one Peter or Parker because there are two Peters. So yeah, from now on, Peter Quill is Star-Lord, Peter Parker is Spider-Man. So yeah, whatever. Either way, so yeah, Star-Lord is just kind of feeling intimidated by Thor's presence, even though Thor is still asleep. As such, they have Mantis wake up Thor, who's admittedly shocked, but but upon waking up and seeing the Guardians, they explain who they are, and he in turn explains what Thanos is doing. That he attacked their ship, that he has the Power Stone after he attacked Xandar. He now has the Space Stone after he attacked the ship, and now he's most likely going to go after the rest of them. And this news just kind of shakes up Gamora. It does end up shaking up Gamora a bit, especially with how because she seems to be a bit nervous by this. And she even explains what Thanos' end goal is. It turns out that when Thanos attacked planets, he didn't kill everybody on the planets. It turns out that whenever Thanos attacked a planet, he only killed half of the planet's population. As we later learn, the reason Thanos attacks planets isn't because he wishes to conquer them. In his own way, he thinks it's a mercy. He feels that the universe is finite, that the resources within it are finite, and that if the population within is left unchecked, then eventually it can lead to an ecological disaster. As such, he thinks that if he can go from planet to planet and kill half the world's population, then it'll allow for more people. It will pretty much just thin out the herd and allow for more resources to go around. Pretty much just one big horrific act to ultimately help out in the long run. But the thing is, like I said, when he does this, it takes time. Like even with we even learn later that he only killed half of the Asgardians on the ship. The other half managed to escape, including Valkyrie, Korg, and Meek. But yeah, the method is slow. It takes a lot of time, and time is something that he thinks that time is something that they think they don't have. Something that Thanos thinks the universe doesn't have. Eventually, if things aren't done quickly, everybody's going to suffer. And that's why he wants the Infinity Stones. As with the Infinity Stones, he could pretty much just wipe out half of all life in the universe with very little effort, just with a snap of his finger. So yeah, and as such, that's the reason he's going after the Infinity Stones. As such, Thor thinks that the next place that Thanos will attack is Nowhere, the place that the Guardians went to in the first movie when they wanted to try and sell the Power Stone to the Collector. And Thor thinks they'll go there because the other Infinity Stones are safely on Earth. He thinks that the other Infinity Stones are safely on Earth. No one knows where the Soul Stone is, and he's already got 2. So odds are the next place he'll go is Nowhere to get the Reality Stone, aka the Aether, as the Collector there has it. In the meantime, though, he thinks that if they want to go after Thanos, they need a weapon. And again, going back to my criticism of Thor Ragnarok, I thought again. Because remember how in that film he was able to summon lightning with his fingertips? Yeah, apparently he can't do that anymore. Or maybe he tried that against Thanos and that still didn't work. I don't know. Either way, he thinks he needs a weapon. He thinks he needs a new hammer. As such, he goes to, I forgot what the place was called, but I'm gonna call it the Forge. It's essential, and by that same token, it's a weapons forge, and it has a specific name, and pretty much everyone thinks it's a myth, and pretty much it's an intergalactic myth where the most dangerous weapons in the universe are. And of course, once Rocket hears that, he wants to go with Thor, as Thor thinks he has to go there because he needs a weapon, because he wants to get a weapon that can kill Thanos. But by that same token, they don't want Thanos getting the Reality Stone or any of the other Infinity Stones, so the rest of the Guardians think that they have to go and intercept Thanos. But in the meantime, though, they but as a result of this, as such, Rocket thinks that they just split up. Him and Groot will go with Thor to the Forge to try and get the new weapon, while the rest of the Guardians will go to nowhere to try and head off Thanos before he can get the Reality Stone. As such, the groups end up splitting up, and end up splitting up and going their separate ways to perform their tasks. While meanwhile, back on Earth. Oh yeah, there's something I forgot to mention about Earth. As after Iron Man, Doctor Strange, and Spider-Man got pulled into space, it turns out that the burner phone that Tony Stark had to call Steve was left on the ground. As such, Bruce Banner managed to pick it up, and Wong pretty much just left him because now with Doctor Strange off Earth, someone has to stay behind to guard the Sanctum Sanctorum. So he went back while Bruce picked up the phone and texted Cap. In the meantime, we cut to Scotland, where it turns out that for the past few years since Civil War, pretty much Wanda and Vision have been just kind of sneaking off from their respective teams and just kind of sneaking little moments with each other, as we see them just kind of in a hotel room. And Wanda's accent is now pretty much gone. And yeah, it's a little distracting because, yeah, I'm used to hearing the accent at this point. So while it does show up in areas here and there, it just seems a little gone, and it's just slightly distracting, but whatever. But Vision seems kind of pulled out of their little romance as the Mind Stone seems to be kind of telling him something, reacting. But at the same time, he and Wanda are just having a nice moment as they like each other, and pretty much as they're walking the street and they're talking about what, and they think that maybe they could just, and Vision elects that maybe they could just stay here, spend the rest of their lives together, but they both have their own things they have to get to, so Wanda thinks it's a bad idea, especially when they see a news broadcast showing the Dark Order ship landing in New York and Iron Man, Doctor Strange, and the rest of them facing off against those guys. So yeah, they realize something big's going down and Vision's got to go take care of it. Which doesn't really last long, as the spear guy ends up coming up and stabbing Vision in the back, which cancels out his form, because, yeah, I forgot to mention, he had a disguise, which might have been something he could do, or something Wanda did, I don't know. Either way, it made him look human, but with him being stabbed, suddenly that guy's vanishes, and we see him back in his android form, as we see the spear guy and the woman attacking him, and knocking Wanda aside as they try to pick the Mind Stone out of Vision's head. As such, Wanda ends up stepping into the fight and manages to knock them aside and pull Vision away. But unfortunately, he's still got a gaping wound in his chest, and whatever that spear did, it's canceling out his ability to phase, so he can't just heal immediately. However, the spear guy and the girl recover, and they end up getting both Wanda and Vision end up fighting them, with Wanda facing the woman, and Vision facing the spear guy. And it pretty much just leads to some really nice fight scenes as they're just fighting throughout all of Scotland. Wanda using her powers to deflect everything. Vision shooting a blast to try and fight them, which they deflect with their weapons, which just kind of spreads it all out over an area. But the fight eventually connects everybody at a train station where it looks like they're kind of screwed, as Vision is still not feeling well, and Wanda's powers are kind of useless in this scenario. Vision tries telling her to leave, but she's not going anywhere without him. Only they manage to get some last-minute help, as a train goes by, we see that there's someone there watching them. The lady tries throwing a spear at the guy, who catches it, and from the shadows we see that the guy is Captain America. Only he looks a little different, as since the last time we've seen him, and since the last time we saw him, he's now grown out a beard, and he's kind of blackened his costume to have the star be black. The red and blue is kind of more faded. And I've heard that this is described to a character to a persona that Cap briefly took up in the comics called Nomad, but I'm not going to call him that. He's still Captain America to me, so I'm still going to keep calling him Cap. So yeah, it turns out that Captain America's here. Not just him, Falcon and Black Widow are here, and they end up providing support and end up pulling Vision and Wanda's fat out of the fire as they manage to fight off the woman and the lady and the guy and the spear guy, and even manage to critically injure the spear guy into having the lady and forcing both of them to retreat back into their ship, which also ends up pulling the spear up. As such, Cap, Falcon, and Widow end up bringing Vision and Wanda back into their ship, with Widow chastising Wanda for her turning her transmitter off, because apparently she did the same thing. And so they realize that with all this crap going down, they are running out of places they can go to, and so they decide they have to go. And so Cap tells them that they ask, well, where should we go? And Cap says, we're gonna go home. As such, from here, the movie kind of goes into a kind of an event format. Like, if you haven't read an event comic, like, a thing with event comics is that the plot is kind of splintered, jumps around a bit, and that's something that this movie also has as well, which admittedly can be a problem. There's a lot of stuff going on in the movie, and each going off in different directions and going off in different places. Because while all the characters are in the movie that we know are working towards the same goal, stopping Thanos from getting the Infinity Stones, they're not all together, so to speak. There are a handful of plots in this movie that kind of trail off into their own directions, have their own developments. Some plots intersect with other, a plot will intersect with another. It's just that there are quite a few things that happen in this movie, and if I kept jumping between them all, it'd be kind of confusing. So, to kind of try and keep everything ordered, I'm going to be looking at each of the plot lines I'm going to keep looking at each of the plots individually. And if the plots are intersect, and if at any point the plots intersect, I'll talk about the next plot and talk about what happens when they intersect. So as such, I'll try and keep the order of when Thanos gets the Infinity Stones in check, but as a result of that, I'm just going to be looking at each plot line individually. As such, we're going to start with the Guardians of the Galaxy plot / the Thanos plot, as they both kind of lead into each other. As we cut to the Guardians of the Galaxy, as we see Gamora is remembering when Thanos adopted her, as his forces attack her planet in a vein similar to the invasion of New York during the first Avengers movie, and Thanos wound up pulling the young Gamora aside while her people were being split apart, and giving her this weapon that was like perfectly balanced, perfectly balanced and trying to shield her while half of her people were slaughtered. As such, we cut to the present day as we see Star-Lord trying to get some weapons ready for when they get to Nowhere, but Gamora ends up telling him, when we get to Nowhere, I have a promise I want you to make. I know something that Thanos doesn't, and if he learns it, it could pretty much doom the entire universe. So if we're in a situation where Thanos could probably take me, I want you to kill me. Star-Lord, of course, doesn't really want to do this, but Gamora gets into promise to do it by having him swear on the memory of his mother. As such, the Guardians eventually arrive at Nowhere, only to find that the place seems strangely deserted. As such, they continue going on to the collector's little storage area. As they walk in, they see Thanos interrogating the collector for the Reality Stone, but the collector's just saying, "I don't know where it is. I sold it a long time ago." Which, that's a lot of crap. Like, he's called the collector. He doesn't sell things. He takes things or buys them. I don't know. Either way, it's a bull-faced lie, and Thanos doesn't buy it. However, while Star-Lord wants to go in just discreetly, since it looks like he doesn't have the Reality Stone, Drax is Drax. He wants to still get revenge for the death of his family, and so he almost goes charging in Dan the Plan, but Mantis managed to use her powers to knock him out. But him falling over causes a ruckus that gets Thanos' attention. As such, he throws the collector into a case, and at this point, they're just going to throw caution to the wind. At this point, it's just caution to the wind. Star-Lord tries to tell Gamora to go to the right, while I just tell Gamora to go to the right while Gamora manages to go to the right while he charges to the left, but Gamora just charges in, and she actually seems to manage to kill Thanos. As she tries to bring her blade down, he grabs it. She ends up fighting her off, and then ends up stabbing him in the neck before taking out taking out the balance knife that she gave her as a child and stabbing him in the chest. As such, he just starts falling over, and Gamora just starts weeping because yeah, she may have hated her life, but this is the closest thing she had to a father in that time. And so he just kind of tells her, and he says, "Child, why?" Before seemingly dying. Gamora just starts breaking down in tears while Star-Lord tries to go to comfort her, until they hear Thanos' voice echoing out saying, "Is that tears I see in your eyes, daughter? In my heart I always knew you cared." And then suddenly the Thanos that she stabbed fades away, as does the rest of Nowhere. As we see the entire area be replaced with smoldering wreckage. And I don't just mean the Collector's hideout, I mean the entirety of Nowhere is nothing but flaming ruins. Everything is dead. All that's left are just a few floating piles of rock that are on fire. And Thanos winds up appearing, revealing that he's already gotten the Reality Stone, as it's embedded right now in the Infinity Gauntlet. And with its power, he's now able to alter reality to his whim, which is how he was able to disguise Nowhere to make it look like it was still in one piece, and even create that fake interrogation between himself and the Collector. And yeah, the Collector is most likely dead. We don't see him again. As we see that as such, Drax ends up waking up, and he does try charging in to attack Thanos, but Thanos ends up using the Reality Stone to turn him into just a pile of bricks. And when Mantis makes herself known, he just turns her into a long string of ribbon. He ends up grabbing Gamora, and Peter comes, and so Star-Lord comes in and is ready to shoot Thanos, but Gamora tells him, "No, no, not him." And of course, Star-Lord, of course, is not exactly willing to kill Gamora, but Thanos starts daring him because, well, he's the boyfriend and this is his daughter, and so he keeps trying to point his gun at Thanos, saying, "Put her down, please, put her down." But Gamora tells him, "You promised," and so he lowers the gun to her, and so Thanos just starts daring him, saying, "Go on, she asked for it. Go on, do it. I dare. Go on, do it." And Star-Lord just keeps pleading and pleading and pleading with her, but at the end Gamora tells him, "I love you." It's like it just gives him an "I love you," and he says, "I love you too," and he pulls the trigger to the gun. Only instead of a laser that comes out of it, turns out it's bubbles. Yep, it turns out Thanos was not willing to let that gambit play out. As it turns out, he used the Reality Stone to turn all his ammunition to bubbles before turning the gun itself into bubbles. Also, it was a test to see if Star-Lord even had the balls to do this, and once he makes the gun go away, he says, "I like him," before using the Space Stone to port himself and Gamora away. Pretty much just leaving the Guardians on what's left of Nowhere as Drax and Mantis reform. So yeah, that didn't go well. In the meantime, we later see Thanos back on his ship with Gamora as he tries to feed her and is feeding her, but she's just not willing to talk to him. She's not willing to talk to him, throwing the food he gave her right at his big throne, and she's just saying to him, and she said, "I've always hated my life here. I never liked it. You kill half my people." And Thanos keeps trying to say, "Well, have you seen your planet now? They're thriving. The children there live lives of empty bellies." And Gamora tries telling him, "Yeah, but you achieved this by killing half the planet's populace." But Thanos keeps trying to justify his actions, just a small sacrifice for a greater future. Which, yeah, this is ultimately one of the strengths the movie has. Thanos himself. He is, at the end of the day, he's the villain. His actions are knucking futs. But pretty much. But he's not, but his justification for his actions it's understandable. Don't get me wrong, it's psychotic. Killing half a world's population just to ensure that in the long run they all survive. That's insane. That's freaking insane. but in terms of but long term, you can kind of understand what he's getting at, and it's actually and it's twisted. It's very twisted, but his motivations are slightly, but you kind of understand where he's coming from. And it helps that he genuinely does believe in what he's doing. He genuinely believes that in the long term, his way is the right way. Yeah, people may not like it, and he understands why they don't like it. But he thinks that. But in the end of the day, he thinks that he's the only person that understands. We have to get rid of these. We have to at least kill half the people for the betterment of the rest of the universe. For the betterment of the rest of the universe. So I just need to do. So I gotta. So this needs to happen, whether you guys like it or not. As such, the conversation pretty much just shows that Gamora is not really willing to listen to Thanos, and he thinks that he's disappointed in her for not following in his footsteps. But Thanos says no, because he says that he had high hopes for her, which is because it. And we soon learn that Thanos apparently had Gamora actually sent Gamora out at some point to search for the Soul Stone. Gamora says she's disappointed, like she knows he's disappointed in her for her failure. To which he responds with, "No, I'm disappointed that you found the Soul Stone and then lied." As such, he leads her to a back chamber where it turns out that he has Nebula, only she's kind of in pieces. As it turns out, she did try to go through with her plan to kill Thanos at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, having broken into Thanos' ship at some point prior to the movie. And while she did nearly get close enough to killing him, he ultimately caught her, and now he's subjugating her to torture. He tries telling... As such, Gamora tries to... As such, he shows us to Gamora and continues torturing Nebula to try and get Gamora to talk about the Soul Stone, but she keeps pleading, "No, I don't know where it is. I don't know where it is." At which point they access Nebula's memory, and it turns out that at some point that we didn't see, either at some point off screen or some point prior to the first Guardians movie, Gamora and Nebula had a talk where Nebula told Gamora he's going through with his plan. He's going to look for he's going to look for the Infinity Stones, and Gamora reveals to Nebula that she actually found a map to the Soul Stone, and she burned it. So it turns out the knowledge that she didn't want Thanos to get was the location of the Soul Stone. As such, he continues torturing Nebula to try and get Gamora to talk, and eventually Gamora just can't take it anymore and tells him that the Soul Stone is on a planet called Vormir. As such, Thanos has them sent to Vormir, and so he brings Gamora with them as kind of insurance, to ensure that she's not lying. As such, when they arrive at Vormir, Thanos and Gamora manage to make their way to this mountain, where they're greeted by this weird hooded figure who knows who they are, who seems to know who they are and what they're here for. As such, he says that seeking out the Soul Stone will pay a heavy cost, and Thanos says, "It's a thing. I'm ready to pay that price." Until the hooded figure says, "Yeah, that's what we all say. We're all wrong. That's what we all say." At which point we manage to see his face, and it turns out this hooded figure is the Red Skull. Yep, it turns out that as the Red Skull later expounds when Thanos asks him why he's here, it turns out that when the Red Skull got teleported away at the end of Captain America: The First Avenger, this is where he wound up. Pretty much the Infinity Stones, as he put it, rejected him, and pretty much just punished his hubris by putting him on Vormir to guard the Soul Stone. Like pretty much just being there to warn other travelers of the cost, keep them in the way, pretty much watching over everything and keeping it. Just pretty much watching over everything. Pretty much just being a guardian for the Soul Stone. And to inform travelers of the price that needs to be paid to get it. However, as a result, and people and you can kind of wonder why he'd be continuing to doing this, especially since what happened in the second film. But my personal theory about how this works is that when he held the Tesseract in Captain America: The First Avenger, and the Tesseract sent him to Vormir, it essentially rewrote his personality. Like, it didn't rewrite his mind, but it didn't rewrite every aspect of his mind, but it did rewrite his persona. Like, it replaced all of all of his traits, his want for power, his belief in divinity, pretty much his desire to be above everybody, and even They just pretty much replaced everything that made him an individual, and replaced it with him being trapped here on Vor, and pretty much replaced it with a desire to watch the Soul Stone and guard it. As such, his memories are still intact. So he remembers growing up, he remembers being raised in Germany, he remembers doing all this stuff. As a result, his skills, his prowess, everything that he had as the Red Skull are still intact, which include his German accent and everything. But in place of everything that made him the Red Skull is this untold knowledge of the universe, and just a mental command that keeps him chained to Vormir. But yeah, that's my personal theory for how this works. But either way, he leads him to the top of the cliff, and he says that the Soul Stone is off the cliff, and pretty much both Gamora and Thanos are confused by this, and he explains that what the price that has to be paid is. In order to get the Soul Stone, you have to give up someone you love, a soul for a soul. And Gamora thinks this is like good news because Thanos doesn't love anybody. Thanos doesn't love anybody. There's no way he can do this now. He can't get the Soul Stone now. There's nothing he can give up that he loves that much. At which point Thanos looks at Gamora and he just looks sad and he's crying. Gamora thinks that he's crying because he's never going to fulfill his end goal until Red Skull reveals that he's not crying for himself. At which point Gamora realizes that Thanos is crying for her. Yeah, it turns out that despite everything, Thanos did love Gamora, and in his own twisted way, he did want the best for her. As such, she tries pleading with him, saying, please don't do this." But he says, "I denied my destiny once. I'm not going to do it again." At which point she tries to take the balanced dagger and stab herself, but he used the reality stone to turn into bubbles. At which point we get one of the most heart-wrenching scenes in the movie, as he just grabs Gamora and starts dragging her to the edge of the cliff, and it's a very powerful scene. Like, it's just like we get a nice, great orchestra as he's getting built up, as we see Thanos just actually kind of struggling to do this, and it's not just because Gamora's fighting back. It's also himself as he hears her pleas, as he knows what he's doing, and you can see the pain on his face as he's dragging her closer and closer to the edge. Like, he's just doing, like, you can tell he doesn't want to do this. He would rather do anything, the price be anything other than Gamora. But at the same time, he thinks, I need to do this. There is no other way this can go down except with me getting all 6 Infinity Stones. So as such, even though he doesn't want to, he throws Gamora off the cliff. And as she falls, the music just picks up as it keeps going in slow motion. We see the pain on Thanos' face as he tries to register what he did. And so when Gamora dies, you can just see the pain kind of go out as it turns to kind of a righteous fury. At which point the cliff they're on, like it had these two spires over it, starts glowing, and the screen just kind of blinks out in a flash. And the next moment we see Thanos in a puddle of waves from the mountain, just kind of floating there, unconscious. At which point he then wakes up, looks around, and in his right hand is the Soul Stone. And that's pretty much the end of that plot line. As the next plot we'll focus on, one more thing that actually happened in that plot line. As after Thanos and Gamora left to Vormir, we see that Nebula we see Nebula being put back together. But as her guard is putting her back together, she managed to get free and knock him and either kill the guy or knock him out. And so as she's knocked out, she goes over to a console and contacts Mantis and Mantis and tells them that she wants them and wants the Mantis and to meet her, and she wants Mantis and the Guardians to meet her on Titan as she runs off back to her ship. And so with that in mind, we're going to go back to the Spider-Man, Iron Man, Doctor Strange plot. As we end up seeing Tony getting into the main room where we see the psychic guy torturing Doctor Strange, trying to get him to give up the Infinity Stone, or the time, whatever. However, as he's going in, the Doctor Strange's floating cloak comes in, as does Spider-Man. Of course, Tony's like, "What the hell are you doing here? I told you to get lost." But Spider-Man keeps telling him, "No, keeps trying to give him an excuse," and Tony keeps telling him, "No, I told you to go back and go back." It's like, "Did you even think this through?" And so Spider-Man says, "Yeah, I did think this through. I actually did think this through." And it gets through. And again, one of my favorite lines with him, he says, "Look, you can't be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man if there is no neighborhood." And yeah, while Tony is not doesn't want Peter here, he realizes, damn, he makes a good point, so he concedes to let Peter there. As such, they see Doctor Strange being tortured there, and Peter comes up with a plan to get the good doctor free. As such, Tony goes in to distract the psychic guy as he holds him at gunpoint. Well, the psychic guy thinks that he's probably going to win this in a fair fight. It turns out he really was just a distraction, as he ends up shooting out a missile that blows a hole in the side of the ship, which in turn caused the psychic guy to get thrown out, and Doctor Strange almost follows after him, but thanks to the help of the cloak and Spider-Man, as he accesses the spider legs that are put in his suit, they manage to grab Strange before he's pulled out, and the psychic guy ends up getting thrown out into space and freezes to death, which allows Tony to go in and seal up the hole in the ship. However, Doctor Strange just starts chewing them both out because he could have gotten sucked out into space. And so they pretty much just arguing over and pretty much just it gets into like a dick measuring contest between Tony Stark and Doctor Strange as we have two arrogant asses in the same room, and it's kind of funny and for me it's kind of meta funny because both these actors played Sherlock Holmes, and they both fit the role well. But pretty much just this kind of like a clashing of egos, as Tony said that as Tony wanted to destroy the stone, Doctor Strange wouldn't do that. So he tried, and even during the first fight in New York, he tried to get Doctor Strange to run away if he wasn't willing to get rid of wasn't willing to destroy the time stone. Doctor Strange didn't do that. So pretty much he kind of blames Doctor Strange for all this. Either way, that pretty much motion gets tabled as Tony says that the ship's on autopilot and is heading to wherever the psychic guy was planning to bring the time stone to. As such, Doctor Strange thinks that maybe they could actually that Tony could easily turn the ship around, and Tony says that he probably could, but should they? And he pretty much just explains his argument that Thanos is going to be coming either way, so they need to plan for this. If they don't, Thanos is going to pretty much wipe them out. So maybe they should go face Thanos on his home turf, which Doctor Strange thinks is a stupid idea, but at the end of the day, Tony managed to convince him, though Doctor Strange makes it clear that if it comes down to saving Tony and Peter or saving the Time Stone, he's willing to sacrifice them both. As such, Tony goes up to Spider-Man and kind of knights him into the Avengers, because at this point, take what you can get, and Peter's not going anywhere. I'm sorry, I keep referring to Star-Lord and Spider-Man by their real names. It kind of helps when they're not in the same room, so you can tell who's who, so sorry. But yeah, he knights Spidey, and pretty much the ship manages to make its way to Titan, though Spidey and Tony are having trouble flying the thing. They do manage to avoid some major structures when they get to Titan, but the ship does still ultimately crash. While everyone on the ship does recover, however, it turns out that they end up getting company as the Guardians have responded to Nebula's distress call and arrived on Titan, and they end up attacking the ship, thinking that Doctor Strange, Iron Man, and Spider-Man are with Thanos, and it leads to a really nice fight between both teams as they try and outmaneuver each other and fight off each other. It eventually kind of gets into a stalemate as Iron Man has Drax has a laser to Drax's head, while Star-Lord has Spider-Man in a headlock with a laser pointed at his head. As such, there's obvious confusion as both sides think the other is working with Thanos, but eventually both sides figure out that neither of them is that both of them are here, that everybody is here to kill Thanos. Here we go, Thanos, and even when they ask, wait, who the hell are you guys? When the Guardians say, who the hell are you guys? Spidey says, we're the Avengers, and it turns out that when the Guardians had met Thor, he explained that the Avengers were protecting the Infinity Stones on Earth. So yeah, with what Thor said and them saying they're the Avengers, they know they're on the up and up. As such, everybody goes out onto Titan. And it pretty much looks like a waste. It pretty much looks like a crap heap, as we see like old ruins of buildings all around the place. And even Star-Lord says when he actually scans the environment of Titan that the planet's axis is off, and as a result of this, gravity is skewed in some areas, which is shown by some things just floating in the air and Mantis just kind of jumping around in the background. As such, As such, we get some more pissing. We get into more pissing matches as we see Iron Man wanting to. As Iron Man says that he has. Iron Man says that Thanos, that whatever that psychic guy wanted, he was coming to Titan. He was coming to Titan, so Thanos is most likely going to be coming here, and they already have what he wants, the Time Stone. So regardless of what's happening, he's going to come to them. So regardless of what's happening, he's going to end up coming to them. So as such, Tony tries organizing a plan between everybody, but the Guardians, being the Guardians, they're not listening to him. In fact, even as he's going through his plan, Drax actually ends up yawning, and Tony's like, "Wait, are you yawning?" Yawning, and yeah, pretty much nobody's willing to listen to anybody as we get two clashing teams, and it's actually kind of amusing as we see Tony. Well, he is, and it is kind of funny too, as we see Tony as he's trying to be the more rational guy, as he's trying to think of a plan to take care of this. While the Guardians just like, screw your plan, we're gonna go. Screw your plan. We don't really do plans. We're just gonna try and running guns blazing. But pretty much so yeah, things are just not going well. However, it's all halted when Mantis points out that Doctor Strange is acting weird. And so they look over and we see that Doctor Strange is using the Time Stone as we see him just kind of going all over the place. And eventually they manage to calm the good doctor down. And it turns out that he was using the Time Stone to look into the various futures for this outcome to see how their chances fare. And I'm going to pause this for a second. Sorry about that. Wanted to check something. And as I was saying, actually, I want to check my notes. As I was saying, it turns out that the good doctor looked into the future and saw 14,605 outcomes for how this entire conflict could go down. And out of all of them, only one future had the good guys coming out on top and beating Thanos, which, yeah, even before that, yeah. As such, the group manages to organize a new plan that we don't see, but odds are it's being based off of what Doctor Strange said. As next time we see Titan, we see that the only one there is Doctor Strange, as he's just kind of sitting alone. As such, we see Thanos come porting in after having gotten the Soul Stone, as he sees Doctor Strange just sitting there, and when he asks where the psychic guy is, yeah, he knows that he's dead. And while Thanos says that this day is given a heavy price, this day has given a heavy toll on me, but he still in the end accomplished his goal. He got the stone to Titan. As such, Thanos kind of explains part of his motivations for why he's doing all this. As it turns out that Titan wasn't always like this, as he's used the reality stone to kind of revert it back to what it looked like before it collapsed. It apparently looked really nice, really beautiful, but eventually the planet was on the verge of collapse. Thanos wound up employing his kill half the population. Wound up throwing out his kill half the population to save our greater world idea. And realistically, the people of Titan deemed him a madman and didn't listen to him. And yeah, as a result, his planet died. And yeah, even learning this motivation, it does make him feel a bit more sympathetic. Again, still a nutball, kill half the universe, freaking psychotic. But again, this is a big thing for Thanos. It's a big thing that helps set Thanos apart from other MCU villains. They do explain his backstory, and while he is, in the end of the day, his actions are pretty much evil and nuts, it does kind of give you better psychological profile, and helps you kind of understand what he's doing, understand the why of his actions. As such, she does go into how with all 6 Infinity Stones you can just snap his fingers and fix everything. And Doctor Strange even asks, "Well, what are you gonna do when you kill half the universe?" And then he says, "I'm gonna rest, just retire, and then just kind of sit down and enjoy the sunset of a grateful universe." Which Doctor Strange says, "Well, we're gonna have a problem with that," and Thanos like, "We?" As we see Iron Man coming in and rocketing in and drops a building on Thanos. And from there, we just get one really kick-ass fight scene as we see Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, Iron Man, and the Guardians of the Galaxy all just fighting and duking it out and going up against Thanos, and it's just, I really can't describe it, but it is such a kick-ass fight, and like as we see everybody throwing everything at Thanos, acting coordinated, using their powers in tandem. Like at one scene we see Star-Lord use, at one scene Doctor Strange provides Star-Lord with lifts so he can jump around and eventually plant a bomb on Thanos while being ported away by one of his sling ring portals. Spider-Man used them to just jump around and land various kicks on him. We see Thanos turn his structure into a horde of bats with a reality stone to chase after the Iron Man as he flies through all these various structures. We see Doctor Strange using his weapons and blasting him. It is such a fun fight scene. It's just really good. Mixing hand-to-hand combat, blasting, energy, magic. It's all so damn good, and I freaking love it. Seeing how them all work together. And the end result of this is that the group manages to pin Thanos down. As they find out that in order to access the power of the Infinity Stones, he has to close his fist in order to access whatever stone he wants. As such, they realize that if they want to give him a handicap, they got to keep his hand open. As such, they manage to kind of to get it open enough till eventually they start holding him in place. As they all eventually hold him down and Iron Man has his hand on the Infinity Gauntlet and starts trying to tear it off. And eventually Doctor Strange is able to drop Mantis on Thanos' head to lull him into a state of serenity. As such, with him incapacitated, Tony asks Spidey to come help him get the glove off, to get the Infinity Gauntlet off. But Mantis says they have to make it quick. He's really strong. As they're holding him down, Star-Lord comes in and he tries taking the opportunity to ask where the heck Gamora is. Oh yeah, something I forgot to mention. Oh, another cool aspect of the fight. In the middle of it, Nebula comes flying in on her own spaceship, and how does she land? She crashes her ship right into Thanos. It is so damn awesome. It's just so cool. Even she asks where the heck Gamora is. But yeah, as Star-Lord starts questioning where Gamora is, he starts saying, "My Gamora," and Mantis says that he seems to be having thoughts of sorrow for Gamora. And then Star-Lord's like, "Wait, what are you talking about? Why was he doing that?" And then Nebula starts putting two and together. It's like he went to Vormir with Gamora. And he came back with the Soul Stone. As such, sorry. Possible distraction. Anyway, as I was saying, so Star-Lord's just like, no, you can't. You're lying, right? He's lying. But yeah, Nebula confirms that he is. Sorry, dog jumped off the bed. Well, I just looked at the weather. Hold on a sec. Okay, that was the dog. Anyways, Okay, sorry, I was prepping for a possible distraction. If my dog comes through the door, I am not pausing this, so apologies in advance for that. But yeah, Star-Lord is not taking this well, as he realizes that he's not lying. In order to get the Soul Stone, he had to kill Gamora. At which point, he just starts smacking Thanos with the gun, saying, "No, it's not true. Don't. It's not true. It's not true." And Iron Man starts trying to hold Star-Lord back from doing this, but Star-Lord managed to hit him enough times that Mantis lost her grip on Thanos, and he ends up breaking free of her control and knocks her aside. And just as Spider-Man is about to pull off the Infinity Gauntlet, he managed to grab back and knock Spider-Man aside, slipping it back on. And so the fight just continues escalating from there as Thanos uses the power. Thanos just knocks aside Drax, Mantis, and Nebula, and from there he uses the power and space stones to affect a nearby moon, and cause the whole thing to just crash right down onto the planet. As such, Spider-Man just swinging around trying to perform damage control, keeping everybody from getting hurt. As Doctor Strange and Iron Man are just are now just doing battle with Thanos, with them just throwing everything they have at him, and him just constantly countering with one of the Infinity Stones. And eventually Doctor Strange is completely incapacitated until eventually Iron Man comes in and starts blasting him with his lasers. And it turns out that Thanos actually knows who Tony is. No explanation, but then again, he's the one that bankrolled the attack on New York, so guess he would know. Guess he would know who the Avengers are. But either way, Tony starts throwing all of his stuff at him, missiles, lasers, and everything. But Thanos is able to just is able to take it all. And eventually, Tony even gets up close and personal and uses it and converts his armor into more heavy artillery to just start smacking him and knocking him aside. And out of the entire fight, all he'd managed to get was one small drip of blood. And even then, Thanos starts turning the tables on him. As eventually he just as he just starts ripping apart, he starts knocking off bits of Tony's armor, and eventually Tony tries to stab him, which he rips off the armor, and then stabs Tony. And Tony's just like, ugh, it's just in pain. And Thanos starts telling him, "When I'm done, half humanity left. I hope they remember you." But before he can actually kill Tony, Doctor Strange says, "Stop. I'll give you the time stone if you let him live." Which, yeah, is a bit of a strange thing, since he said he'd be willing to sacrifice anybody to keep the time stone safe. As a result of this, Thanos does concede, and so the good doctor complies as he summons the time stone, because it turns out he took it out of the eye of Agamotto, as Thanos actually tried grabbing it, and he pretty much destroyed it. And so the good doctor hands the time stone over to Thanos, who just puts it right into the Infinity Gauntlet, bringing his Infinity Stone count up to 5. As such, Star-Lord tries one last attempt to blast him, but Thanos has pretty much just gotten what he's wanted now and just ports away, leaving them all there. And yeah, the only response Peter has is did we just lose? And Doctor Strange says, we're in the end game now. As such, the next plot we can probably discuss, I think the last two plots we should discuss are the Thor. I think the next plot we'll discuss is the Thor plot with Rocket. And admittedly, I was gonna talk about this when I got to the next plot point, as that one's the most important, as it plays right into the climax. But this one I think I'll probably get into because it's minor, and admittedly has the least impact out of all the plots. As we see Thor, Rocket, and Groot heading to the Forge, and yeah, one of the most important aspects of this is that we get some character development for Thor. As Rocket goes to talk to him, as Thor seems a bit out of it. When he was talking with the Guardian, he talked about how his family is dead. His father, his brother, his mother, even his mother, and just kind of all the crap that's happened in his life. But he keeps trying to put on a happy face, even though it looks like he's barely holding it together. It's like he keeps saying, I'm over 1,500 years old, at least I think that's what he said. I fought numerous foes, all of them want to be dead, yet I've managed to kill them. Thanos is no different. All I need is my hammer, and then I can just easily take care of him. And yeah, it's obvious that he's trying to put on a brave face. He's trying to look on the positive side of everything. But yeah, it looks like he's on the verge of a breakdown. Like, he is just trying everything he can to just hold it together right where he is. Because admittedly, yeah, he has faced a lot of crap in these movies. And while he has lost a lot, in the course between the first film and the second film, he learned that not only was his brother adopted, but his brother turned against him and tried to kill him twice. He lost his mother. He wound up losing his mother because of what happened. He wound up losing his mother, and then he tried returning to Earth, only for him and his girlfriend to break up. And then when he did find his brother again, and then when he learned his brother was still alive after the events of the last movie, he learned that it's a lot of crap has happened in his life, and it's all just stacking up on top of each other, and it looks like he's not doing well. Rocket tries to comfort him, but Thor says that we need the hammer, and if this doesn't work, then I have really nothing left to lose. However, Rocket does give him a shiner, as it turns out that Rocket still has his eye. As Rocket gives Thor an eye he had. In Thor Ragnarok, Thor's eye got Hela stabbed him in the eye. As such, Thor is able to put in a replacement eye. As such, Thor puts in this replacement eye, and they get to the Forge, only to find that it's gone dark and all these rings surrounding it are frozen. As such, they go in and they examine the place, and it turns out that in there is a mold for the Infinity Gauntlet. Before they leave, though, they're attacked by the only person that's alive on this forge, in this case, a dwarf. I forgot the actor's name. I'm so sorry, and I don't want to forget the actor's name because I know the actor. I just don't remember his name. I know he played Tyrion Lannister in Game of Thrones, and I only know that because other people watch it. I wish I knew his name. He's a good actor too. I'm so sorry. But yeah, it turns out that this dwarf is the guy who created the Infinity Gauntlet. Thanos came to this place and threatened to kill every dwarf in the forge if he didn't give him the Infinity Gauntlet. If he didn't make him a weapon that could channel the power of all 6 Infinity Stones. And the guy ultimately complied because he thought that if he did, then he wouldn't kill anybody. And Thanos tended to be a dick, wound up killing everybody anyway and let him live, but wound up petrifying his hands and freezing the forge. So yeah, this guy's got a lot of regrets, and it doesn't help that Asgard was supposed to protect this place, but since Asgard destroyed it, it left it open. However, Thor managed to figuratively reignite this guy's spirit. He says, he may have taken your hands, but your ideas are all in your head, and I need a weapon that can kill him. Please help me. And so has managed to get the dwarf encouraged enough to stand up and help him. As such, they get a plating ready for a new hammer. In this case, this one's a hammer/axe combo that can channel the power of a god, which he calls Stormbreaker. However, in order to forge it, they need to get the star of the forge circles running again. Which in case they need to get the rings moving. And they need to align the rings. As such, with rocket ship, Thor is able to pretty much stand on the rings and throws the ship around enough and gets Rocket to ignite the jets, allowing Thor to use it to pretty much just pull the rings open and get the star ready to shoot at heat that can open up the mold to get Stormbreaker ready. Unfortunately, it doesn't stay open for long as the eye it doesn't stay open for long as one of the mechanisms breaks and the eye closes. As such, Thor goes in personally to get it open, which even the dwarf says is a suicide mission. But Thor says they need everything. If they don't get the hammer, if they don't get Stormbreaker, it won't turn out well either way. As such, he opens up the eye, and they do manage to get it superheated enough so they can get Stormbreaker out of its mold. But yeah, it leaves Thor severely burned, and he crashes right back into the forge. As such, the dwarf manages to knock the metal pieces of Stormbreaker out, but they need a hand. But Thor's not doing so well. But he says that if they can get him Stormbreaker, then he can be healed. So they need to get a handle. As such, Groot, who's just been kind of in the background throughout this whole film, just playing his video games, he sees everything going down, and he sees Thor the way he is, and he sees the pieces of Stormbreaker, and he puts the game down and decides to step up as he stretches out his limbs and uses his arm to create a new handle for Stormbreaker, which he immediately cuts off. As such, we see Thor's hand open up as Stormbreaker starts to react. Then we'll see where that goes in the last plot for the story, the Earth-based plot. As we cut to Rhodey in Avengers Manor as he's talking with Thunderbolt Ross, who's still the Secretary of Defense, as they're kind of chewing him out for losing Vision, Wanda, and everyone else in the stolen Quinjet. However, and for some reason, Rhodey is giving him crap because they chose to make them criminals because of the Accords. To which I respond with, "I thought you were okay with the Accords in the last movie." And I mean, okay, fair enough. As time's gone by, maybe he did eventually change his mind. But by the end of Captain America: Civil War, despite the fact that he was seriously injured and couldn't move without help and was actually getting physical therapy, he still thought that he and Tony kind of made the right call. So it's kind of weird that we've seen him change. That we've seen that outlook change, especially since he's gotten new braces to allow him to walk. But yeah, it's just kind of weird. Either way, as he's getting chewed out, the Cap, Widow, Wanda, Vision, and Falcon end up walking in, and Thunderbolt and General Ross does tell him he's got some nerve coming in there at all while the world's on fire, and he said, "Do you expect forgiveness?" But Cap pretty much tells him, "I don't expect forgiveness, and I'm long past the point of asking for it. We're here to fight, and if you're going to get in our way, we'll fight you too." As such, Ross tells Rhodey to arrest them, and he says, "I'll get right on it." And then after BB says, "That's your court martial," and yeah, they're just hugging and happy to see each other again. Again, as such, Bruce comes out of the shadows because yeah, he was the one that called Cap in the first place, and just kind of explains the whole situation with Thanos and that he whole situation with Thanos. Of course, when Vision hears this, he thinks the first thing they should do is destroy the Mind Stone, which yeah, Wanda's not exactly willing to do because one, she loves Vision, and well, because she loves Vision, and as Cap puts it, they don't trade lives, which is kind of funny what we see later. But pretty much, they think that the best solution is they have to try and find a way to remove the Mind Stone from Vision's head. If they can do that, then they can easily just destroy it without sacrificing Vision. And while Bruce says that they can do that, it would. However, they still think that it would still be a problem, as Bruce doesn't really as Bruce is not smart enough to be able to remove the Mind Stone, since it's such an integrated part of Vision's physiology, and keep him safe while also preserve. And even if he could, they don't have the technology on standby for this, and the odds are higher ups wouldn't exactly be willing to give it to them. But Cap says that he thinks he knows someone that could, and he knows someone that would be able to do all this. And so the group makes their way to Wakanda, even giving them a heads up as we see T'Challa and Okoye talking about military strategies for any potential threats, and they say that and they know that a fight's going to be coming to them as they go to Bucky as we see him kind of doing farm work, and they say that the White Wolf needs to step up and fight again. As such, they go to him and give him a new robotic arm because yeah, they know a fight's coming. And while Bucky is not exactly happy about this, he knows he's going to have to fight. As such, all the group arrives in Wakanda, and we get a nice little we get a couple funny scenes. Okoye says, "When you said you're opening up the world, I didn't think we'd be getting this." And it's like, well, what would you expect? No, I thought the Olympics, maybe a Starbucks. And then when Bruce arrives, he asks Rhodey if they should bow. He's like, well, he's a king. What do you think? And so when they arrive, Bruce bows and it's like, no, we don't do that here. And then Rhodey's even like, what are you doing, man? It's I don't know, it's slightly amusing. I thought I'd mention it. Not important to the plot, but either way, yeah. So pretty much they bring Vision to Shuri, who's able to get a scan of Vision, and she says that they could remove it, but says that she can remove it, but unfortunately it would take time as he's got like trillions of neurons in there that she's got to individually rewrite and detach on the stone, and if she even misfires once, it could cause a collapse that could pretty much just fry Vision. So yeah, it's gonna take. So if they want to do this, it's gonna take a lot of time, and unfortunately, time is not on their side. As she talks about this, we see the Dark Order immediately attacking Wakanda as they're dropping cities on top of them. As they start dropping stuff on top of them, the city is ultimately saved because it's shielded. But various other ships end up crashing around the city, and from them arrive the lady and the heavy guy, who has now gotten his hand replaced with a metal arm. As such, with the oncoming threat going, everyone pretty much suits up. They get like T'Challa gets into his Black Panther suit. The armies of Wakanda step up. The armies of Wakanda end up stepping up and getting ready to fight. Everyone gets their weapons ready. Steve ends up getting 2 new shields, and Rhodey gets into his War Machine armor while Falcon gets his wings ready, and of course, and Bruce, in order to make him actually useful, he ends up getting into the Hulkbuster armor, which is actually kind of nice. I like that. As such, Cap and Black Panther go to the lady and the muscle guy, saying pretty much trying to get them trying to get them to surrender, but they make it clear that they're not going anywhere, and they're not going anywhere without the Mind Stone. As such, they end up opening up their ships, and from them we get a bunch of I'm guessing Chitauri soldiers as they end up charging into the shield. As such, everybody gets into position, and yeah, even M'Baku from Black Panther is there with his army. Which yeah, they're on good terms. Because T'Challa isn't being a dick like his dad was, or the previous generations who pretty much believed isolationism was good. But yeah, Pretty much, but yeah, as this thing continues going on, but yeah, these guys start charging into the shield and trying to powerhouse their way through it. And yeah, even they're realizing that, and yeah, it's not doing well, as any soldiers that do manage, as any Chitauri that do manage to get through are severely burned or get their limbs cut off or even are cut in half. But some do manage to get through, and as such, the armies are getting ready and start fighting them off. And as we said before, they don't sacrifice anybody, which is why they're perfectly willing to sacrifice Wakandan soldiers. Nothing personal, it's just we don't know them. They're not main characters. They're cannon fodder at best. So it's okay to sacrifice them. But yeah. But unfortunately, they see that some of the soldiers are running around. They see that some of the Tatari are trying to run around the shield, and the fact that some were even able to get through in the first place just shows that they can't. That if they get through there, then they'd be defenseless. They just have a straight line division to get the Mind Stone. As such, they decide that if they're going to do that if they want to keep them open, if they want to keep them in front of them, they've got to open up at least the shield at least a little bit so to allow them to come through. And while not a lot of people are happy about this, they ultimately do as T'Challa orders the portion of the shield to be opened up, and the Chitauri soldiers just come rushing through, and it leads to once again a very giant kick-ass battle as everyone starts charging in and they start fighting off the Chitauri soldiers. However, and it just keeps going on and on and on as they start fighting through it, but the Chitauri start just little by little getting the upper hand, just starting to overpower them little by little more and more, and it's just turning more, and it's just getting worse and worse until it looks like they're almost going to be ultimately be defeated. When suddenly the Bifrost actually opens up in the sky and blasts right down to the earth, and we see that in the Bifrost, and from the Bifrost, we see Rocket, Groot, and Thor now charged up with Stormbreaker. And yeah, one of the things that the dwarf said that Stormbreaker could do is that it could operate the Bifrost. So yeah, Thor can now go anywhere. He can pretty much use the Bifrost, and right now he wants Thanos dead. As he charges into battle and just pretty much gives them all a big upper hand as things just continue, as the fight continues escalating more and more. As such, we see that Wanda is still watching from the lab as Shuri is still trying to detach the Mind Stone without hurting Vision, and so Wanda realizes that these people need her help, and so as they ultimately send in more ships that can dig under the ground and come up, she ends up blasting through and just uses her power to knock them all aside. Which Okoye says, "Okay, why was she back there?" And yeah, that's a very valid criticism. Only it turns out this was actually part of what the Dark Order wanted. As the lady says, she's on the field, move in, and it turns out that the spear guy managed to survive the encounter back in the Scotland, as he ends up charging and taking out some of the guards, and Shuri sees him coming in and has to hurry up and shut down the program to extract the Mind Stone, as she gets her weapons ready to fight them. And however, this doesn't turn well for her as Vision gets up and engages in combat himself, and the fight ends up causing them both to fall out the window into a surrounding forest into a small surrounding forest. As such, things are just getting more and more. Things are just getting worse and worse as they report that Vision needs backup. And so Wanda almost gets out, but the lady ends up coming in and knocking her aside, and this leads to a battle between the Dark Order lady and Okoye, Black Widow, and Scarlet Witch. As they all start getting to this battle, we see Bruce fighting against the big guy as they ultimately get knocked down into a waterfall, and Bruce is and this guy is still just being a constant threat as he starts tearing the Hulkbuster armor apart, and Bruce is just saying, "Come on, Hulk, come on, I know you like to make your big entrance, now we need you right now," but the Hulk is still not willing to budge. Bruce finally says, "Okay, fine, you stupid green monster, I'll do this myself." And Bruce manages to ultimately grab one of the severed arms from the Hulkbuster armor and attaches it to the big guy and activates the repulsor on it, causing him to blast up right into the shield. As he's flown right into it, it ends up tearing apart and he explodes. As eventually as with the lady, as she's fighting Scarlet Witch, as she ends up fighting Black Widow. Sorry, Scarlet Witch ends up using her powers and throws her into the path of one of their saw vehicles, and she's just killed. She's just wiped out. And as such, eventually Cap ends up going in to help Vision in his battle with the spear guy, and it pretty much results in the guy being impaled by his own spear. pretty much with them gone, it looks like the tide is now turning in their favor as the Chitauri are now being taken care of one by one. Thor is taking out all their ships, the good guys are overpowering them. It looks like that things are going in their favor. Until Vision gets another headache from the stone, and they realize that they're not out of the woods yet. And lo and behold, Thanos finally shows up on the scene. As such, Steve tells everybody to close in on them. They need backup, and so everybody pretty much closes in on location and all start charging at Thanos as he starts walking to Vision, and it's just pretty much a curb stomp. Everybody that gets close to Thanos, he just knocks aside or throws or just incapacitates. It just looks like, yeah, it's obvious that at this point they are running out of options. As such, and one of the options that they said was that, and that was actually part of the reason why Wanda was staying behind with Vision, as Vision said that her power, if injected into the Mind Stone, could easily destroy it. And the reason that she didn't want to do it is because, again, it would kill Vision, but Vision tells her that it's okay, I won't hurt, because all I feel is you. And as such, reluctantly, as Thanos kind of knocks everyone else aside, she starts just pouring all of her power into the Mind Stone as we see it overloading. Thanos gets getting closer and closer to the point where she has to blast him back herself, and he has to shield her with the Infinity Stones. But eventually she succeeds as she used her powers to pretty much obliterate the Mind Stone, and which in the process kills Vision. Of course, Scarlet Witch just starts crying and weeping over this, but then Thanos goes up to her and says, "Don't weep, my child. Now is not the time for tea. No, it's not time for mourning. In fact, there is no time at all." And so Thanos clutches his fist as he utilizes the Time Stone to turn back time and restore Vision to one piece. At which point, before Wanda can do what she did again, he knocks her aside, and then he just rips the Mind Stone right out of Vision's head, killing him all over again. As such, he places the Mind Stone in the Infinity Gauntlet, and now he's got the complete set. However, before he can do anything, Thor ends up charging in as he starts blasting him with lightning, just flying right at him. Thanos tries using the power of the Infinity Stones to blast him back, but Thor is a Stormbreaker, and he manages to stab it right into Thanos' chest, causing him to fall to his knees. Thor comes up to him and he says, "I told you I'd kill you for that," because, yeah, he's been wanting to get a piece of him thanks to him killing Heimdall and Loki. And so Thanos is just struggling to talk as he says, Yeah, you should have gone for the head." And so Thanos raises up his hand and snaps. At which point we get what I think is pretty much a near-death experience, if what later films show us is true. As we see Thanos in this big red-tinted area over water, as he finds that the wound that he suffered from Stormbreaker is gone, and as well as the Infinity Gauntlet. He kind of looks around and wonders what's going on as he sees the spire, and there he sees a young Gamora. And when he goes to her, she turns to him and she says, "Did you do it?" And he says, "Yeah." And at which point it looks like she's about to break down crying as she looks horrified, and she says, "What did it cost?" And his response is, "Everything." At which point it cuts back to the real world as we see that Thanos snapping his fingers seems to have fried the gauntlet. As such, Thor says, "What did you do? What did you do?" But Thanos, instead of answering him, uses the Space Stone to warp away again. As such, the heroes manage to recover from what Thanos did to them. But, yeah, Thanos did exactly what he said he was going to do. As one by one, we see characters just start fading, literally. Like the first one to go is as the Bucky, as we see him walking up, as he starts turning to dust before just falling apart. And so, just one by one, we see characters just all turning to dust and just fading away. Many Wakandan soldiers just start fading away as people watch on in horror. We see Scarlet Witch standing over Vision's body before she turns to dust as well. We see T'Challa going over to Okoye and helping her get up and say, "This is not a place to die." Before, just as he helps her up, he turns to dust as well. We see Falcon go to turn to dust as we see War Machine looking for him. And just one by one, you see all these people just start blinking out. As we cut to Titan, as we see the heroes there, just all standing, all seeing what's going on, and just one by one, the Guardians start fading away. Starting with Mantis, then Drax, even freaking Groot goes away, and Rocket's just standing there watching him as he's fading away, and it's all horrible. And even as the rest of the Guardians all fade away, except save for Nebula, who's still in one piece, Tony's just watching this, and he looks to Doctor Strange and says, "I'm sorry, it was the only way," before he fades away as well. And then, of course, we get to what many consider the most heart-wrenching scene in the whole movie, as Spider-Man says, "Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good." And so Peter Parker realizes he's the next one to go. Tony goes to him and tries comforting him, but Peter just keeps saying, "No, I don't want to go, I don't want to go, I don't want to go." And it's just so heart-wrenching as you see Spider-Man just begging and pleading for his life, even though he's not going to make it. Eventually, Tony has to lay him down, walking over him, as he turns to dust as well. And leaving the only ones left on Titan, Tony and Nebula. And so we then cut back to Earth as the heroes are just standing there in awe, as they realize they lost. And they lost bad. As they take this all in. And so the last scene in the movie is where we cut to Thanos as he goes to a serene green planet, enters a hut, and then just sits down and watches the sunrise as the film cuts to credits. But of course, that's not how it ends. Marvel film and all. As the last scene, as we get our post-credits scene, and we see Nick Fury and Maria Hill talking with each other as they're picking up all the strange happenings that have been going on through the film, when the snap occurs, and just as they're in the middle of New York, I think, as they see cars crashing, as people just start disappearing, a plane crashes into a building as its pilots vanish, and so as Nick Fury starts seeing these, he says, "Call people, it's Code Red," before Maria turns to dust as well. Nick starts realizing how bad this is, and so he rushes back to the car as he goes to his bag and pulls out a PDA, but as he activates it, he starts turning to dust as well, and fades away as the PDA drops. But the camera focuses in on the PDA as we see what he was trying to do, as the screen changes to a star, to a familiar red and blue star symbol, signaling the eventual entrance of Captain Marvel. So. I still think this is a really good movie. Like, as a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe since it first appeared, this film delivers in spades what it promised us from the beginning. It gave us, first let me talk about the positives. The positives, for starters, this film's stakes are just, first off, I think one of the biggest strengths of this is the characters. Something this film does is that it doesn't really give you time to establish the characters and set up who they are. Instead, it just kind of the film kind of throws you into it, which, in a way, could be considered a negative, but honestly, and I know I'm going to sound elitist when I say this movie is strictly for MCU fans. And I know I sound like an elitist fanboy dickhead when I say that, because especially since I kind of gave Age of Ultron crap since part of that movie, to understand that movie's plot, you had to have watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But the difference there is that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was just a regular TV show that tied into a movie franchise that barely acknowledged Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s existence. Whereas Infinity War is another film in a long line of films. a film that's been built up for years, and it's meant to be a culmination of just little bits of hints here and there as the films have gone along, and just the whole film is meant to be a payoff for all those hints. So seeing it all come to fruition is kind of part of the joy of seeing the movie. And unfortunately, you need to be familiar with that. As such, unless you've seen at least most of the films in the MCU, I'm afraid you're going to be kind of lost if you go to see this movie. It's like because so if you pretty much if you wanted to see this film, if you wanted to make this film your introduction to the MCU, I'm just going to say right now, go somewhere else. Start with literally any other first movie, but don't start with this. Watching Infinity War as your first MCU movie is like just learning to swim, and it's like trying to learn to swim by jumping into the deep end of the pool. You are not going to get anywhere. You are going to be lost, and you are not going to understand what the hell is happening. I promise you. With that being said, though, because the film is pretty much built on established continuity from previous films, you do know these characters. You know the actors, and they're all still really good actors. We got Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange, Tom Holland as Spider-Man, Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. We got the Guardians of the Galaxy. We've got everybody from Black Panther. Everybody turns in a freaking awesome performance in this movie. They play their characters well, and part of the joy is seeing all these that any crossover should give is seeing the characters interacting off of each other, and it works perfectly. I loved seeing the interaction between Tony Stark and whatever character he was paired up against, because for example, when he and Doctor Strange are in the same room, they've never met before now, so they obviously don't know each other. And so it's just a clashing of egos. Or when Tony Stark meets the Guardians of the Galaxy, he trying to think of a cohesive plan, and they're just like, whatever, we'll wing it. It's really nice, and just kind of seeing them all come together. Or hell, even or when Bruce Banner comes into the fray, when he meets Shuri, and she's obviously smarter than him. As she says, why didn't you do this when you made Vision instead of what you did? And she's like, we didn't think of that. It's like, that's okay. I'm sure you did the best of what you could. And it's nice. And that's another thing I like with the film. The humor. It's really good humor. It's really good humor. Kind of being lighthearted. Without feeling like it's intruding on the big important plot stuff. It's really nice. And the characters, on top of that, the characters actually have some really good arcs in this movie. Like with Thor, we build on him kind of dealing with the trauma that all the films that he's gone through have done to him. Him losing his family, his brother, his mother, his father, his sister, who admittedly was trying to kill him, to even his best friend in Heimdall. Just little by little, his world's being stripped from him. He lost his hammer in Ragnarok, and now he's losing almost everything else. And you see, he's just trying to hold it all together. It's obvious it's hard. It's hard that it feels like it's hard, and we get some more add-ons to other potential plot points. Like when Bruce Banner comes back, when Bruce comes back to Earth, we see a brief moment between him and Black Widow where that just adds a bit of tension, because the last time they saw each other, it did not go well, as he wanted to run away and have them start a new life, and her response was to push him off of a ledge so he would turn into the Hulk and help them out in battle. It's not doing so well. So yeah, things aren't, and so yeah, they're not doing so well. And we still get some really, and still leads to even more action. Like we get some more development with Scarlet Witch and Vision, as we see them developing their relationship and what they're willing to do for each other. We see kind of more add-on to Tony and Cap as they're still dealing with the fallout in Civil War. As like I said back in my Civil War vlog, damage like that just can't be undone. Again, the Accords to Cap line to Tony, and Tony attacking his friend. It just that type of damage can't be just thrown out. That damage just can't be ignored. And even though Tony knows he needs Cap's help, it's a hard decision to make. It's a hard decision to make to let him come to help him. To even Tony's freaking relationship with Spider-Man as part of the whole, because he gives him the Iron Spider suit for Infinity War, but he doesn't want him there in the first place. The only reason that Spider-Man got pulled into the fray was because he was a stowaway, as Tony put it. But At the end of the day, he got stuck with him because Spider-Man wanted to help out because this is a big thing. And at the end of the day, if Thanos succeeds, it would if Thanos succeeds, it would hurt everybody, not just the. It would hurt everybody, it would hurt everybody. See, like Peter said, can't be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man if there's no neighborhood. It's just adding on more to that and more drama, especially when it gets to Peter's death scene, which is one of the most remembered moments in the whole film. Just seeing Peter collapse and say, "Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good," as his spider sense warns him about what's going to happen, but he's powerless to stop it, so he's facing his own mortality as he just breaks down and falls to the ground. It's heartbreaking in a way. It's just really heartbreaking, and that's even more so how the film goes. Heartbreaking as well. It's got a lot of great emotional moments between characters, like with Star-Lord and Gamora, as Gamora tells Star-Lord, if I get captured by Thanos, you need to kill me." And while Star-Lord doesn't think he'll do it, he'll have to do it. He promises. And so when it gets to the time when he does need to kill her, or else when Thanos is going to take her, he doesn't want to do it. He hesitates. He struggles. And even then, he still fails, because even when he pulls the trigger, Thanos stops him. It's just twisted, and eventually, and even when Star-Lord screws up their plan to finally get the Infinity Gauntlet off, you definitely understand why. Like, at the same time, you're still cursing the guy because they looked like they were winning. They almost had the gauntlet off of him. They could have won that battle, but he effed it all up by saying where it's like, you're lying. It's just like you're cursing him, but at the same time you understand the pain. He lost, like, because pretty much everybody's broken in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Star-Lord has a dead mom. Tony's parents died in a car crash. Steve was frozen for decades. It's just everybody's got some kind of tragic backstory, and it gets emotional. It's just so, and it still has a lot of, and on top of that, yeah, emotional. Again, I think one of the best scenes in the whole film is not just the death of Spider-Man, but the snap itself. It's horrifically beautiful to witness. It's not a grand, like, it perfectly exemplifies the phrase, "This is how the world ends, not with a bang, but with a whimper." As all it took was Thanos snapping his fingers, and you just see everybody fading away. There's no grand explosions. There's no more action. It's just everyone silently fading. Everyone's silently dying. Just turning into dust in the wind. It especially helps when you see the Wakandan army, as you see just random soldiers just fading, and M'Baku just watching in horror as it happens. Even Okoye's expression when T'Challa helps her up and he fades away, it's just a look of abject horror. Just her, as she just has to register what she's looking at. Just her seeing her king, just the guy, her teammate, suddenly just disappear. And it's just, oh my god. And when you're seeing these characters just going away, you're just thinking to yourself, "Oh my lord!" Like, you realize that the instant someone starts fading, it can't be stopped. And again, even when you knew these characters are going to be saved in the end, because among the fallen were some of the remarkable heroes. Like, before this, we had Black Panther, and his movie was extremely profitable. His movie made a crap ton of money. They'd be stupid to get rid of him. Hell, even freaking Spider-Man, who they had to fight tooth and nail just to get him in their dang movies, in their dang universe. You can't get rid of him. It's impossible to get rid of Spider-Man at that point. It'd be stupid to get rid of Spider-Man at this point. But so they're going to get them back they're going to get everybody back. But how? The obvious solution is to get the Infinity Stones back, of course, but they don't know where Thanos is, and the last thing we saw of him was the Infinity Gauntlet was fried. And again, and I think another thing that helped, and it's just so depressing. It's such a depressing ending, because throughout the whole film, you see everybody struggling to keep the Infinity Stones away from Thanos. It's just an effort to do that. to do that. And of course, they had many opportunities where they could have just easily gotten rid of him. Tony's response was just toss the time stone in the garbage disposal and be done with it. But Doctor Strange said, no, we're not going to do that, even though it probably would have been the best solution. We see everybody, we see them doing everything they can to try and save Vision, destroy the Mind Stone without killing Vision, even though they're still sacrificing an army of people in the process. But again, we didn't know them, so they don't matter. Only for, well, even then, that's even for that to fail. We see the Hulk. We see one of the most powerful allies, the Hulk, is actually sidelining himself because he's afraid to face Thanos again. You see everybody's constant struggles, the torture they put themselves through just to stop Thanos from getting any of the stones, and it all ends in failure. Failure after failure. That they they try to get to know where the Reality Stone. He got there first and decimated the place. Gamora doesn't want Thanos to know she knows where the Soul Stone is. Not only does he find out where it was hidden, but he kills her to get it. It looks like the heroes have managed to actually stop it and are getting the Infinity Gauntlet off. Peter Quill screws it up by smacking Thanos enough that he's able to overpower Mantis and get back into the fray. They managed to actually destroy the Mind Stone. He used the Time Stone to undo what they did. Just little by little, you see everything falling apart, and the stakes just keep getting higher and higher, to the point where you just just feel your heart pumping, because with every single stone Thanos gets, he gets just a little bit closer to his end goal, and that end goal is pretty much omnipotence. If you see, in the Infinity Gauntlet comic, he did become God. He could do whatever the hell he wanted by just a wave of his hand. Hell, at one point he became the freaking universe. I'm not even joking. Read the comic. He actually overpowered the universe and became the universe, which admittedly left him open since his body didn't have his consciousness in it, and since the Infinity Gauntlet was still on there, it allowed Nebula to go in and take it. But that's the comic, not the movie. So we'll just forget about that. So just seeing it all, just seeing everything all fall into place, it's sad. It's tragic. On top of it, and again, it helps, and again, it all helps with the acting. Every single performance is perfect. The drama, the arcs, how everything works, the depths, the humor. When someone's with the humor, the drama, all of it works perfectly. And it all helps, and it fits the character, and it all fits the characters greatly. It's just amazing. It's just amazing, and it really helps and it really does make you feel more for everybody, especially when things are just going wrong, as you know how close they are to losing, but they keep fighting, they keep struggling through everything. It's just so damn powerful, and I really like it. And it all also comes back to Thanos, who is probably one of the best MCU villains that we've seen. He was again, there was the fear that all the buildup that they gave to him throughout the rest of the films would not be paid off in this movie. And that's a good, real fear. Because how would you pay him off? Especially since most of the villains before him were just lackluster or just bland, or just kind of either lackluster, generic, or bland. But But for one thing, Josh Brolin does a great job with Thanos, who is so who plays him no matter the situation, he plays him so subdued, but always in control. He is a powerful warrior, and he knows exactly what he's doing. He can be humorous. He can be kind of humorous. It can be kind. He can be cruel. He's strong-willed, but he's emotional. His motivations, in a way, are not from a place of greed. In his mind, he is doing the right thing. He's not doing this because I want power because I want to rule the world, or I want power because I want to be rich, or I'm the bad guy so I can do whatever the heck I want. No. It's actually complex. And yeah, you can make, and I know, yeah, people threw the argument out that he could usually use the Infinity Gauntlet to pretty much create more resources for people. And yeah, fair enough. You could easily make that argument. That's a joke that is constantly thrown out. That was constantly thrown around when this movie came out. But just kind. But you understand his motivations. You understand why he's doing it, and even when you see his home planet, you do get why he got to this mindset. Yeah, it's a psychotic mindset. You don't like you're willing to sacrifice half your people to save the other half. Okay, but is this a case where the ends justify the means? In a way, no. It's kind of both. It's complex, but at the end of the day, you do know it's still a very bad thing. It's because he's still willing to kill half of the universe, half just because he thinks that it'll help everybody in the long run. And in some ways, it probably will. But but how? What gives him the right to choose who lives and who dies? What gives him this right to just go from planet to planet and be that and kill everybody because he thinks it'll help them all out in the long and because he thinks it'll help everybody out? It's really it's definitely crazy, but again, but it also helps that he is probably he goes through the whole arc in this movie, and in a way, and I've heard Thanos described as the true protagonist of this movie, and I'd buy it. I do kind of buy that Thanos is the protagonist of this movie. As is the whole film is about him trying to get the Infinity Stones and the conflicts he and his crew are dealing with. And yeah, again, they're the villains, and so you can say he's a villain protagonist, but it's a strong struggle, and we see him just constantly going through all this stuff to get them. What he has to sacrifice, the people he has to give up to do it. Even the ending where he goes through his near-death experience and he sees Gamora, and when she says, "What did it cost you to get what you want?" and he says, "It cost me everything." He knows that he gave up everything to do this. He knows that in the eyes of everybody, he'll be seen as the bad guy, and you know what? He's good with that because in his mind, he saved the universe. It just meant costing half the lives in it to do it. It just meant sacrificing half the life in it to do it. So on top, but yeah, as for what this film is, it really does feel like a grand payoff. For one, again, and we still have some really kick-ass action throughout the whole film that really exemplifies all the characters' powers and strengths, and it's all well choreographed. We got really good acting from all the main performers, and it shows throughout. And it shows throughout. The effects, I think, look freaking fantastic for every setting. The alien worlds, Wakanda, the technology, all of that stuff is nice. We got some fun lines, and we got some really funny lines. We have some legitimate good character drama as we see how characters are developing, including, again, I think the best examples being Thor's arc, the scene where Thanos sacrifices Gamora, to even Spider-Man's death. It's all just perfect, and it all really comes together into a really well done, and it all just really comes, and even just a really good villain, and it all really comes together and really makes the film memorable. I think the only major downside I give this, and there are some downsides. The fact this film is not very welcoming to newcomers, that you need to be aware of the plot. You need to be aware of the plot before going in to see this movie, or else you are not going to be or else you're going to be confused, And then, of course, there's the whole, and then, and I think another problem I would think of it is probably I think the weakest. I think out of all the plot lines we've seen, the weakest is the Thor one, and that one was cut down a bit, but from when the screenplay was made to the actual filming. Apparently, that would have had Thor and Rocket and Groot fighting a giant serpent to get Stormbreaker, but they wound up cutting that out, and I think that's where the best because and while I wouldn't say the Thor subplot is bad, I do think it's the weakest of the bunch. But I think there are other minor things, like again Thanos could have just created more resources instead of killing half the universe. Even the hypocritical statement of we don't sacrifice lives and they're still when they're sacrificing so many. But at the end of the day, I think Infinity War is still really good. The stakes are grand and definitely feel like they have weight to them. And the stakes are grand and have great weight to them. The main act, all the main characters and the performers all the main characters turn in great performances. And because you know these characters already, you're able to you're able to just kind of cut the intros out of the way and just see them coming together and interacting, working off each other, joking, talking, getting used to each other, getting on each other's nerves, etc. It's nice, and I like that. We get some good character arcs for everybody. We get good character arcs for everybody involved with some legitimately good drama. And it all just comes, and I think it all just works out. We get some really fun action that numbs the mind. Come on, Xander. I'm not getting out of my chair. It all just comes together for what I think is a really kick-ass movie. And at the end of the yeah, I kind of do want to talk more about the film, but I am kind of going long even for what we have here. So I think I'll just kind of try and wrap up as best as I can. At the end of the day, I think Infinity War, even for what it is just a really kick-ass movie. It's just a really kick-ass movie. It definitely set the tone for what was going to happen or for what was going to come next. And and with the way it ended, you definitely felt like you needed to see more afterwards. Just it had great action. So, yeah. So on the whole, I think I just pretty much said it. Got great action, great acting, great characters, great effects, great arcs, and a very and a very dark conclusion that I think really opened everything up for the sequel. So, yeah. On the whole, Avengers: Infinity War really damn good. At the end of the day, it probably helps that it's part one of a pair of films. So I guess I could talk about both films together when I get to Avengers Endgame. But for now, before we get in Infinity War, it's a really good film that by the end of it really makes you feel somber about how things turn out. So yeah, that's all I have to say. For all those who stuck for the whole 2 hours, I thank you for watching. I'm so sorry I took that long with everything, but that's ultimately how the cookie crumbled, unfortunately. But next time we meet, we'll hopefully have a kind of shorter vlog as we go to see what another character was doing throughout during the events of Infinity War, as we go back to meet Scott Lang with Ant-Man and the Wasp.